modern consulting was born. You think of Bain Consulting, Boston Consulting Group, or Bain or McKinsey. They were actually born out of this idea that we can help companies lower their costs through accelerating the experience curve. So this is kind of universal within business. Now, what we have also is what I call the benefit curve, which is the value of something to a customer or a user or society. And that goes up over time. And these both follow these S curves, which are also right out of nature and biology too. And so here's the interesting thing, which is that dividing point. Right as something starts to become kind of profitable, there's something that happens. So on one side, you have the innovation mindset on the left, the same values and rules I just talked with you about. On the right side, you have a production mindset. And that's a crossover point. That crossover point is really difficult because you end up with lots and lots of conflict in any organization. The moment an idea tries to scale up, people they have to behave differently, and you end up with battles. And the behaviors in each of these curves is different. On the cost curve, it's about zero-sum behavior. That is win. You're always trying to cut. On the other side, it's positive-sum behavior. That is, you're trying to build. And you can see the world of entrepreneurs and designers on that positive-sum curve, and you think of corporate management and governance systems, traditional governance systems on that zero-sum curve, which is how do you minimize risk? How do you reduce the chance that something will fail? The conflict between these two worlds is actually quite profound. So artists, if you put an artist and a Wall Street CEO in a room together, what do you get, right? That's that conflict at work. The artists, the innovators, the dreamers, they look at those people on the other side and think those people don't get it. They're stuffy, they're in their towers, they don't understand what ordinary people are doing. They lack the ability to think of possibilities. And on the right side, the people who are executives or managers look and say, you know what, those people are impractical. They have no idea actually how to build things and make them valuable and give lasting contributions to society. And you hear that conflict all the time in business. If you put a scientist and an entrepreneur room, you often get the same problem, or a business person. So a scientist will say, think of all the things we could do. And the business person thinks, what are we making tomorrow? They're very different. So how do you build the rainforest? How do you build these types of environments that are unpredictable, these positive ecosystems? But one, you learn by doing. So this comes out of psychology. There's a whole field of psychology around cognitive behavioral therapy, which is how do people actually change their behavior? And we know that people change their behavior through a certain set of things. So one, it's through actual practice. If you've ever been to a therapist, like I have, so it's okay to admit it. Everybody does it now, they just don't admit it. But you learn by actual living your life. You don't change by actually talking to a therapist. You change by actually living your life, by actually going out and trying things out. So this is what therapists have discovered, is that you can't talk people into curing them. You just give them tools to go out and deal with the real world. Two, you enhance diversity. That is, you look at opportunities to cross sectors, to cross silos, to always get people touching and interacting in ways that they were unexpecting to. Three, you celebrate role models and peer interaction. That is, you're looking for ways for people to be inspired by others. So who would you really follow for a recommendation? If some movie critic somewhere wrote, you should go see this movie, or your friend says you should go see this movie, what are you more likely to follow? You tend to follow your peers. So this is very important in terms of how we shape our behavior. And four, you build tribes of trust. You build communities where people are willing to trust one another because trust allows you to start taking risk and allows you to be innovative. And five, you create social feedback loops. That is, you look for ways for people to learn that their behaviors have consequences. So when people do things well, they're rewarded, and when they do things poorly, they are also penalized. So this is very important because rules, the behaviors that we engage in, have to be sustained. And those types of feedback loops where people hear about behavior are very important. And six, you make social contracts explicit. It's hard to follow the law if you don't know what it is. So how do you tell people what the rules are? So if you go to Facebook today and you walk around campus, you'll see signs up everywhere, like break rules, break things. They have big signs up that say break things, right? Very different. You wouldn't imagine going to General Electric and seeing a sign that says break things, right? But what they're doing is they're saying make the implicit rules expressed. Don't just hide them all the time. Tell people what you expect. So this goes to this idea that human beings are fundamentally separated from one another. So all of us, we know so much. We accumulate years and years and years of wisdom from living our lives, but so little of it actually goes out into the world and shared with others. And that's just because of us awkward human beings. We can't share that much. We can only share as much as we can talk or type. Or we can non-verbally communicate, but it's still very, very limited. So human beings, by and large, are separated from one another. So trust lowers these barriers. So designing these ecosystems requires the lowering of barriers, so you remove the inhibitions for people to share ideas with one another, because ideas are the basis of all innovation. So it's like having a wall and then busting it out. And when you bust that out, if you can take a community of people where the walls are brought down, they start to form linkages and connections. In fact, there's social science research that's been done comparing the social networks of Silicon Valley with those in other cities. And you see the difference. The valley looks like this: hyper interconnected networks where people are sharing and free flowing, they're recombining into teams and companies. And you look at other communities, and there's these dispersed little nodes here and there, and a few people cluster and do something here, and a few over there, but you don't get the interlinkages you see. So let's try to get more practical, because a lot of you may be thinking, well, this all sounds pretty fuzzy, so let's try to make it less fuzzy. So we're going to contrast the old and the new world. So in the old world, you control production. In the new world, teams create together. All things that are innovative and new and valuable, teams create them. No one controlled them from the very top. 2, instead of clustering, that is shoving everybody together in a technology park or even an incubator, it's about human connectivity. You can put people right in the same office building right next to each other, but that doesn't mean they're working together or that they know each other or that they'll do anything valuable together. 3, instead of never failing, we're saying we allow people to fail fast and cheaply. 4, instead of just focusing on the inputs and outputs of a system, we reduce social barriers. 5, instead of planning outcomes, we allow people to experiment, iterate, and adapt. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, instead of saying that economic life is morality neutral, which is what we've been saying for a long time now. In fact, we've been saying for a long time now that individuals really don't matter to economic life, that you're a fungible labor commodity. You can be fired, a new person can be hired to be another cog in the system. We're saying that values actually matter. Now, this is profound, this is radical, to say that values actually drive our economic life. But that is exactly what we're finding right now. And it's actually not that crazy. If you've ever been to California, you've ever seen the redwood trees, spent time out there, we're just like nature itself. So if you think of a redwood ecosystem, these are rainforests too, Pacific redwood rainforests. At the very top, the trees have a limited amount of sunlight. They're competing. It's desperate. It's zero-sum competition for finite resources. It's battle to the death. In fact, you'll have some redwood trees that will spawn off a bunch of children around them in a circle, and they'll kill the parent because they take out the light from the parent. So it's brutal. It's absolutely brutal. But what happens when new redwood trees are born? As new redwood trees are born, redwood trees actually have to interlock their roots because they only go 6 to 10 feet down in the ground. And so wind, a single tree standing alone can be knocked down very easily from wind. The trees interlock their roots because they have to do that to survive. So what happens as redwood trees are born is they grasp hands and they shoot for the sky. That's what human beings do too. At the bottom, it's highly positive sum. That is, even people you're competing with, you work with them. You have to find ways to collaborate and build things. At the very top, it's cutthroat competition because there's only so much sunlight. But you need both, because otherwise the whole rainforest would die. So one of the questions I get asked at this point is, all right, that's great theory, that's really nice, but what do you actually do? What does this look like? So this is sort of what it looks like. This is a class at Stanford that's been run for about 3 decades now. This was a pioneering class. Not many people really know about it. A class on product design. This came out of the engineering department. And what they discovered is that product design was not at all what they thought. It was a human element to how teams could get built to design new products. And so this classroom actually embodies all the things I was talking about earlier, about these rules of the rainforest. So anything's possible. They start with a problem. They're given a problem from a corporation like BMW. It says, we need a new windshield. And we have no idea what it's going to look like. We just know we've got a problem because the old windshield's not working for these reasons. So they give them to a team of students. They randomly select these students together. They're diverse from all different places. They bring in role models. They bring in people from industry to talk about these problems. They bring in experts from across the school. In fact, the professors have to co-teach these classes with adjunct faculty. They even bring in a therapist. They actually have psychological counseling for these teams because these teams stretch over a year and the teams get very emotional. Their grades are all dependent on one another. And they found that counseling actually helped the teams perform better. And what they've done experiments on these teams, and they've discovered that the quality of the emotional interaction between people actually drives the final quality of the product. The process, the environment you create actually changes it. And in this room, there are signs around there saying things like break things, right? Break things. And lots of other types of expressions of the rules of the system. So there's role models, there's diversity, there's interaction, there's unpredictability, there's also real-world interaction, there's social feedback loops. They do all the same things. They discovered that you can create an assembly line for an unpredictable thing, but it can be really good if you get the process and the environment right. So that's what it looks like in a single classroom. In fact, this model at Stanford now is spread into many things. There's a whole school, there's an Institute of Design, people call the D School, which now even teaches elementary schools. So my son goes to an elementary school that's been shaped, its curriculum has been shaped by these models developed at Stanford in design, which is hands-on, prototyping, iteration, experimentation, engaging with the real world. It's a new model of education, and it's just starting to really catch on. But it works. It's very powerful. Even in kindergarten, the kids are going out and talking to people in the community, saying, what's a problem in the community, and can we prototype solutions? Believe it or not. Look, they've got a few years to learn, but it's a very good effort for kindergarten. And this isn't just in classrooms. We actually do this in the real world. So these are people that come to our conference, and we actually get them engaged in building things and prototyping their ecosystems, this invisible infrastructure, this thing that you can't see. You can actually shape it by shaping the environment. And how do we shape this environment? Well, we give them more than just the work itself. You actually design them something that actually allows people to feel uninhibited as they work. And you can laugh at all you want about startup companies and the culture of startup companies, but there's a method behind this madness. And you can intentionally make it. You can create this method if you want. And you can do this in cities too, not just in small rooms. This is the city of Bogota, and we've been doing work out there to design the system, but we've been doing this in lots of other places as well. But the same models, the same underlying principles of human behavior can be spread at scale in many different forms, whether it's in governance, in education, in business life. And companies too. So this is a company that I'm actually running right now. I'm the acting CEO of this company. I built this company in the beginning. I met two scientists who developed a new technology for water filtration, and we're active on Kickstarter. It just launched last week, and we've got close to 1,000 people that have already bought these new bottles. And the reason I bring this up is because this product was this interaction of lots and lots of people, and it was totally unpredictable. If you told me the company would exist today the way it does when I started this thing years ago with the scientists, I would tell you you're crazy. That doesn't make sense. But that's what happened. It was just unpredictable. And the thing that mattered in the end was the people and their contributions and their ability to give into this process. This bottle, by the way, is the most powerful bacteria filter ever in the world. It actually drinks just like a regular sports bottle, and it gets EPA-grade bacteria and cyst removal. So that's just a shameless plug. And then there's new tools. So this will be interesting to you because we're offering this for free. This is a free download. We call this the Rainforest Scorecard. It's a new toolkit for actually measuring the ecosystem as a whole. And anyone can use this, and we've offered this up in a Creative Commons license, so people can even take it and remix it and use it in different ways. So what this does is it actually says, look, if you think of human behavior, the interactions between people as causing innovation to happen across a whole system, sustainably and systematically, how do you measure that? How do you get a handle on it? So that's what this book is. This just came out a few months ago, so this is actually fresh off the press. And I'll give you an example of what we discovered. So we actually used this Rainforest Scorecard on everybody at the summit. We just held this big conference that Ron mentioned. And we had about 50 countries there. And people filled out these Rainforest Scorecards. They talked about their own ecosystems. We took all that data and we aggregated it. Here's what we found. So 6 categories: culture, role models, activities, leadership, frameworks, and resources. These are all the different elements. And if you look at this, what's most profound that jumps out is this. So the blue is where ecosystems are weak, communities or cities, and the orange is where they're strong. And so they're strongest on the left, and you see the weakest on the right, which is this: the best innovation ecosystems rely on culture and role models, not resources. Resources are the ones on the right, the weakest. And you see lots of communities like this. They'll say, we've got all the resources. It's all there. We got the universities, we have the capital, we've got smart people, people work hard, we got a good work ethic. It's all there. Why isn't it happening? Why are we losing jobs? The resources are not the problem for the most part. You think it is, because money is very deceptive. But it's the culture and the role models actually have a stronger correlation to the best ecosystems. So that's a lot of stuff. It's very heady stuff for some of you on a Sunday, and you may think, you know. So I'm going to make it 3 words for you, so I'll make it really easy to remember how to build rainforests. At its core, rainforests are about fear. Fear inhibits people from taking risk. It holds them back. All innovation requires dealing with fear. So how do you deal with fear? You create trust. So trust is at the core of these systems, where people are willing to extend it and give it and share it. And where does trust come from? Well, trust comes out of love. And this is pretty profound, because it's kind of silly to talk about economic value being derived from love, but it's true. If you actually read the biographies of like Steve Jobs, right, or even hear about the stories of Mark Zuckerberg, or even going beyond that, back to the days of HP, these were people that did things in the beginning not because they wanted to make money. They did it because they believed in it. And the reason is that's important is because if you've ever started something yourself, anything, you know in the beginning, you just want to do it because you really wanted to do it. It's not worth it in the beginning to try something that's hard, because there's so many things you could do instead. So this ability to actually love the project you're on, the people you're working with, the product you're building, the initiative you're taking, this is core to innovation. And it's not been honored very much in economic life. But I'm here to say now that we know it is. It matters a lot. So 3 words is a lot for people to remember on a Sunday afternoon, so I'll actually reduce it to 1 phrase. So you can take this home with you. It's simply this, which is that you matter. We talked about economic life and people saying, you know what, you're replaceable. You're just a cog in a big economic system, and your job is fungible, and your money is the same as anyone else's money. And the experience that I've seen in building companies and in the work I do is that individuals are everything. Because at the microscopic level, when weeds are being birthed, how people interrelate determines whether or not that's valuable. When Google was born, Sergey and Larry met at the Stanford campus. And would the world have been different if they didn't really like each other very much, if they never ended up doing business together? The world would be profoundly different. Everything starts with 2 people sitting in a coffee shop, talking about something, expressing an idea. 2 people becomes 3, becomes 5, becomes 10. That's how all companies are born. Individuals matter a lot. And so this is you, this is me, we're weeds, trying to push through the sidewalk. Every idea I've ever had was always trying to push through some kind of pavement that kept it from coming up. So thank you. This has been a real honor, and I look forward to working with you, talking to some of you, and watching you grow your rainforests throughout your communities. Thank you.